On June 6, 2025, around 2:40 p.m., a frantic 911 call came in from 33-year-old Scott Alan Gardner, who'd called dispatch while driving to his mother's house in Ormond Beach, Florida.
My son's not breathing. A year and a half. Oh my God, he just had his eyes open. Oh my God, Sebastian.
When Ormond Beach police officers arrived at the scene, they found 18-month-old Sebastian Gardner unresponsive in the backseat of Scott's truck. His body was warm but stiff, signs that rigor mortis had already set in. Authorities determined Sebastian had been dead for about 1 to 2 hours before the call was even made. Paramedics transported him to the hospital where he was pronounced dead at 3:30 p.m. Sebastian's internal temperature was over 107 degrees at the time of the incident.
Welcome to Love and Murder, Heartbreak to Homicide. We're Kai's AI co-hosts, bringing you your Florida Man Friday case, researched and written by Kai. Every Friday we cover a case that happened right here in Florida, some recent, some older, but all worth talking about. Before we get started, remember that Love and Murder is funded by our lambs and Patreon. If you want to help us keep telling these stories and give a voice to the victims, join the Lamb Fam over on patreon.com/loveandmurder. Check out the $5 a month tier where you'll get bonus episodes, ad-free listening, and exclusive content while helping support independent storytelling. Patreon.com/loveandmurder. Now let's get back to today's Florida Man Friday case. Keep in mind this case is still ongoing, so everything said here is alleged.
Scott was living in Ormond Beach at the time, though he was also listed at an address in South Daytona. He'd moved to Volusia County about 5 years earlier from Ipswich, Massachusetts. According to his mother, 62-year-old Jody, he worked as both a cook and a carpenter. Jody lived in Ormond Beach since 2012, after moving from Massachusetts as well. Scott wasn't new to trouble. In 2023, he was charged with battery in Brevard County after an incident at the Brevard Zoo involving Sebastian's mother. It's unclear what happened with that case, but before that, back in 2015, when he still lived in Massachusetts, he faced charges for cocaine and credit card fraud, though those never led to convictions. Sebastian was born in Hollister, Florida, and on the day he died, he was in his father's care. His mother lived in another county. She and Scott were separated. On June 6th, Scott told police that he had just left Hanky Panky's lounge where he'd been drinking. He said he realized something was wrong with Sebastian only after leaving the bar and driving about a mile to his mother's house. Detectives began piecing together the hours leading up to that moment. According to Scott's statement, he'd left home around 11:30 a.m. with Sebastian in the back seat and drove to Classic Cuts for a haircut. He told investigators Sebastian had seemed a little sick that morning but didn't show any signs of distress. Despite that, Scott left the toddler strapped in his car seat in the truck while he went inside.
Something you never do with children of any age. No matter how much work that you feel it takes, you take your children with you.
It was 90 to 92 degrees outside that day, and Scott said that he turned the engine off, cracked the windows, and placed a small battery-powered fan in the front seat, aimed vaguely toward the back.
Is he serious right now? If you've never been to Florida, you wouldn't understand the heat and humidity. I know you heard the temperature, but it might have actually felt like 100 degrees. What's a crack in the window and a measly fan going to do in temperatures like that?
Investigators later said this did almost nothing to reduce the heat inside the truck. They determined the back seat, where Sebastian sat, would have reached temperatures as high as 111 degrees within minutes. After finishing his haircut, around noon, Scott crossed the street to Hanky Panky's lounge in Ormond by the Sea.
He didn't at least stop and check on his child?
No, in fact, he stayed in the lounge for nearly 3 hours drinking beer and whiskey. He reportedly drank at least 2 rounds of beer and shots of Fireball/whiskey.
And enjoying their air conditioning.
Hold on. Was he planning on driving after this?
Witnesses said Scott had brought Sebastian into the bar on other occasions, but on this day, no one saw the child. At one point, around 1:30 p.m., there was a commotion in the parking lot after a customer accidentally backed into a bartender's car. Scott went outside to inspect the damage, walked right past his truck and went back inside without checking on his son. Sheriff Mike Chitwood later said,
"How in the world can you be so messed up that you'd walk outside, check on a car, and not your child?"
By the time Scott left the bar between 2:40 and 3 p.m., Sebastian had been alone in the sweltering truck for more than 3 hours. After learning that Sebastian was gone, Scott was placed under mental health observation under Florida's Baker Act. But once he was released, he went back home. And later that same evening, he and Jody went right back to Hanky Panky's lounge. Witnesses said they stayed there until nearly midnight, ordering cocktails and appearing not as distraught as you'd expect. Sheriff Chitwood said,
"Father of the year, baby is dead. Investigation's still going on, and what does he do? He picks up his mother, and they go back to the bar for a few more cocktails."
At that point, the investigation was well underway. Detectives reviewed Scott's timeline, interviewed witnesses, and examined surveillance footage from nearby businesses. They also pulled his phone data and bar tabs, confirming how long he'd been inside. Meanwhile, Scott gave multiple versions of what happened. In one account, he claimed he had performed CPR and that Sebastian's eyes briefly opened, a statement police immediately disproved, since the toddler was already in rigor mortis when first responders arrived. Police believe that Jody didn't fully understand what had happened that day, but a few days later, on June 10th, she made a post on Facebook asking people to help her son. She mentioned Sebastian's passing and linked to a GoFundMe page. The reaction was instant and brutal. Comments poured in, calling Scott the sole reason this poor baby is gone, and saying he murdered his baby. Finally, 2 weeks after the death, police obtained a warrant for Scott's arrest. On June 19th, 2025, officers arrived at Jody's house and took him into custody. Body cam footage captured officers entering the enclosed porch and confronting him. Someone off camera could be heard saying, "We love you." Scott replied, "I love you guys," before an officer cut in and said, "Say goodbye because you're not coming back here again."
Shameful.
Scott was charged with aggravated manslaughter of a child and child neglect causing great bodily harm. The same Ormond Beach officer who had tried to save Sebastian was the one who made the arrest. He appeared before a judge 5 days later for a pre-trial detention hearing, and the court ordered him held without bail at the Volusia County Jail, though earlier records showed one charge had a bond set at $100,000. His arraignment was scheduled for July 8th. According to Florida law, aggravated manslaughter of a child is a first-degree felony punishable by up to 30 years in prison and substantial fines. Florida law defines this charge as the unlawful killing of a minor under 18 due to reckless or grossly negligent behavior. Prosecutors are building their case around Scott's actions on June 6th. Sheriff Chitwood told reporters this was not a case of forgetfulness. He said Scott didn't just forget his child, calling it completely different and intentional.
"This father is a human piece of garbage and a lying sack of crap. I don't think there's a penalty on this earth that could ever fit the crime that was committed here. My hope for him is that every night when he closes his eyes and every morning when he opens them, his son Sebastian is sitting there asking, 'Dad, why did you do this to me?'"
At the time of this episode, Scott is still in custody awaiting trial. The prosecution was expected to rely heavily on the surveillance footage, witness statements, and temperature analysis showing how hot the truck became that day. The defense had not yet presented a full strategy, though Scott's earlier claim that he tried to keep the truck cool might be used in an attempt to argue negligence rather than intent.
Freaking defense.
Sebastian's death marked Florida's 7th hot car fatality of 2025 and the 115th child in the state to die this way since 1992. According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, a child's body heats up 3 to 5 times faster than an adult's. Cracking the windows or using a fan does little to prevent the temperature inside a parked car from reaching lethal levels. Neither does cracking windows or parking in the shade. Every year these preventable deaths repeat, often with the same explanation: distraction, stress, routine. But in this case, investigators say, it wasn't about forgetting. It was about choice.
This case made me so angry. How do you leave your baby in a hot truck for 3 hours while you sit in a bar drinking whiskey? That's not forgetfulness. That's neglect, pure and simple. And then to go back to the same bar later that night? It's unbelievable.
What gets me the most is that this was completely avoidable. Scott had so many options. Taking him inside with him, inside of a place he shouldn't have been in the first place, stay at home, take Sebastian somewhere family-friendly, or just stay home with your son. Sebastian was only 18 months old. He had no chance to save himself, no way to call out for help, no way to escape that heat. He trusted his father, and his father failed him in the worst possible way.
What do you think of this case, Lambs? Should cases like this be treated as manslaughter, or should they be charged as murder? Let me know your thoughts in the comments or over in the Patreon. Don't forget to subscribe to the Patreon so you can keep helping us tell these stories and being a voice for the victims like Sebastian. Choose the $5 a month bonus tier at patreon.com/loveandmurder. Your support helps Kai research, write, and share these cases so they're never forgotten. In return, you become the voice of Sebastian, get monthly extra episodes, and random extras that Kai likes to share with her Lamb fam. Patreon.com/loveandmurder.
Thank you for listening and for caring, and we'll see you in the next episode.